Righty. Are we live? Are we there? Are we live? Have I done it? Oh, I might have the bitrate. Might be too high with the two cameras. Let me try to fix that. Can you guys see? Can you see? Can you see the BANDIT camera? Oh, I can try to zoom in actually. Look at this. You can zoom in. Oh, this is great. Look at this. You guys can see my beautiful, beautiful dog. That's the BANDIT camera. There's supposed to be one where you can track pets, and it's been sold out. So we have this one. It doesn't track movement yet. Maybe we'll upgrade to that at some future point. But now you can look upon my adorable dog. Right there. As much as you want. As long as she decides to be here. I can actually, I think, rotate it too. Oh, wrong way. There we go. Zoom and enhance on the dog. There we go. There she is. Now it can be like she's always with us. Right here in the corner. I don't know where I want to put this actually. Like if I want to. I feel like there, like down here just like made the most sense. Oh, she's gonna lay down. So sweet. Or like I could do it over here above the chat. I just feel like down here in the corner like makes the most sense. Technology is beautiful. It really is. And this camera is very nice. I'm very glad that I have this one. Because I can zoom it, I can move it around. Like it's not like I was really worried about having like a static webcam. Because anytime she moves a little bit off screen, like I wouldn't be able to, you know, she wouldn't be in frame. She's not a human, she doesn't know. And now I can kind of follow her around a little bit on her little adventure. She's very precious. She's very precious. I think, let me just check. It looks like we're good. I'm worried about overdoing it. I don't know. Welcome to 90% of Bandit's life. If you guys are ever like, where is she? What is she doing? It's this. She's doing this outside watching squirrels. She's doing this in front of the fireplace, or she's doing this next to me. That's her life. She loves it. Has a great time. Bottom right corner is nice. Hey, no worries. Glad you guys could make it. I know it's not our normal... I haven't had our normal routine for a little bit, so I'm glad you guys could be here. I'm also starting a new thing where I wash my hair at night and I don't heat style it. So we're seeing how that's going. I got some like air dry cream from Ulta today, and I haven't tried it yet because obviously it hasn't been overnight yet, but I'm hoping it'll be interesting. I don't know. I get like, it's like really annoying to have to wash my hair the day that I film, because like just to give you guys, if you guys want to know this piece of information, how my filming days normally go, I wake up, I do some chores in the morning, take care of a little dog and her little precious little toe beans. See if I can move over even more. I think I'm about at the edge of how much I can zoom in currently. I'm actually gonna just move it closer to her. Give me a second. Oh, I can't really move it that much closer. That's fine. You guys have to just deal with looking at the toe beans from this far away. Here you go. 2x zoom on my dog. But my filming day schedule normally goes, I wake up in the morning, get ready, do some chores, and then I have to wash my hair, I have to style my hair, I have to do makeup, have to do like a second read through on the script, get all my camera stuff set up, check all my makeup again, make sure all the batteries are charged for everything, get the lighting all figured out, do all that stuff. Then I start filming. And then I'm done filming typically between like 5 and like 6-ish. Although right now it's really difficult just because it's sunset is effectively like 4 p.m. And so it's very difficult to get all of that done and do a whole day of filming before the sun starts to set. And I was like, well, if I could just spend an hour less time doing my hair and just having my hair basically taken care of, except for maybe like touching up my bangs or something, if I could just do that, that would probably make my filming days go a lot smoother. And then I wouldn't have to worry about, like, sometimes I've had my, guys, you know, you get bad hair days, right? You know, you put in too much conditioner, you put in too much leave-in product, your hair gets all greasy or whatever. I've had that happen a couple times. I'm just like, I'm done. So that's my schedule. I don't know about this, but the chat keeps getting blocked. I get a message saying I'm not subscribed. I unsubscribe to resubscribe, and that works. Oh, weird. Okay, I have not heard of that happening before with the subscription feature. But now we know. I don't know if we just got blocked or as far as if you were blocked, you wouldn't be able to be in the chat at all, I don't think. But I don't think there's a reason for you to have been blocked. I'll look at that. I think that's probably just a YouTube glitch, which it is YouTube, so, you know, there's always a possibility with that. Okay, I'm gonna let people on Twitter know that we're streaming, and then, yes, nat mode is very much activated. And then we'll get into the subject, answering questions, doing all that fun stuff, and yeah. I'm assuming, let me just double check. Okay, audio's good. I was like, oh no, I don't remember if I muted the camera, and I did, so hopefully no echo. So how's everyone doing? What's been going on? Any fun things going on? I know it's been a hot minute since we've had a stream. Holidays are over. We're back to the normal schedule of life. I just feel like the past, like, I feel like everything between, like, immediately before the holidays and, like, today went together in just one giant blur. Like, I had no idea. It was like, oh, it's suddenly the 20th of January? When did that happen? I was not aware. Because I didn't really have my actual Christmas until, like, New Year's Day. New Year's Eve. So I'm like, oh, we're doing that now. Okay. So I'm like, kind of getting back into the swing of it. Definitely a lot of stuff I want to do for this next year. I just today, when I was getting ready for this, I finally realized what I want to do for this back wall. I think I have like a makeup vanity, but I never actually do my makeup at the vanity anymore. I always move whatever makeup I'm using for that day, and I do it at my desk. So I'm just going to get rid of that vanity because it was like a cheap, like $80 Amazon vanity that's like stained and broken and falling apart anyways. So I'm gonna get rid of that. I think I'm just gonna get like 2 bookshelves and then like do makeup storage on like one bookshelf and then books on like another bookshelf and then put some like little knickknacks in there. And I'm kind of thinking about doing, you know, like the open back bookshelves where you can like lean them against the wall. So that way I could still have the lights behind it. And then I kind of want to do like maybe some like, if I can find some like black and purple flowers or something, I feel like that would look cute with the lighting. I don't know. Maybe that's too much. Let me know what you guys think. I just feel like I want to have something back here. And I'm like, okay, I just want to actually get settled and have something that, like, is more permanent. And I think I figured out a way to do that. So I'm going to try and do that. That's my current idea. I am also over January. I'm like, my least favorite part of the year is January through, like, April. May to August is my favorite part of the year, and then like October, November, December, like January, like that kind of like, well, not even like January, like till New Year's basically. Like that I'm okay with. I like the initial starting part of fall, like the cusp between summer and fall is probably my favorite part of the year, but I just don't. The rain is like, it's just nothing but kind of damp and rainy for like 8 months, and that's not my thing. Just not my jam. All right, let's get into some questions. Let's do that. Have you heard about the new potential OGL for D&D? I thought that was like a typo for DDLG for a second, and I was like really confused. I have heard a bit about that. I actually have a few videos I have saved from like my watch later list on my other YouTube channel, my like the one I casually watch on. I've seen a couple people talking about it. I thought that they kind of backtracked on that and then decided to not do what their original plan was for the OGL, and now they're going back to the drawing board, kind of. Is that the current status of things? Or is like any sort of big drama been happening? I mean, honestly, it's been really hard to keep track of all the drama, you guys. And I'm gonna say drama is just a catch-all term, but like most of this stuff is like fairly serious allegations and crimes happening with like a little bit of like, oh my gosh, look at what D&D is trying to do, or look at the scandal this influencer's in. There's a little bit of that sprinkled in there. But it's been mostly like Andrew Tate being arrested. I think the most recent thing that I saw this morning was Andrew Tate is now being held until February something, I want to say, like February 21st. Anyways, whatever amount of time it is, his detention is being extended until the end of February-ish. So that kind of indicates to me that, okay, this case is like serious, still ongoing. There's the allegations against Andrew Callahan, which I'm doing a video on. Okay, we're just gonna have a little short aside here. So if you guys don't know who Andrew Callahan is, Andrew Tate, I'm gonna assume you guys know because I just did a video about him. But Andrew Callahan is a YouTuber who is most well known for All Gas No Breaks, and then another follow-up YouTube channel called Channel 5, where he would go around and he'd interview people and talk to people on the street and just literally let them say whatever. Like, his style is very laid back, very like let people say what they're gonna say, don't try to frame anything in a certain way, like just ask basic questions and then let people fill the airtime was essentially his thing. And so he kind of built up a reputation for being able to talk to anyone, whether it was like, you know, Crips in LA, or pickup artists, or QAnoners, or members of like the January 6th riots. Like, didn't matter where you came from. You could be spring breakers or people at Daytona Beach or whatever. It didn't matter. He could talk to you. He would let you say what you wanted to say and just like put it out there. So he got a reputation for being like a really good interviewer and being, sorry, microphone, being very sympathetic. Oh my gosh. Okay. Can you guys see on her, sorry, interrupting this important story, on my dog's head, and I'll show you guys this in detail later. You see the little pink thing on her head? That's like the groomer put a little tiny like rainbow flower in her hair. A little rainbow flower hairpin. It's so precious. It's so cute. She's like a little doll. It's so adorable. And also, if anything in this conversation's upsetting, just look at my dog. That's what I do. When I get upset, I just look at my dog, and then I feel happier. I just ask anyone. Anyone who knows me knows. So Andrew Callahan, getting back to him, he built up this really big reputation. He just put out a documentary with HBO, actually, that was about the events leading up to January 6th. I actually haven't watched it. I was going to watch it, but I'm not. And this is why. Because as that documentary is coming out, it released on December 30th, and then by January 5th, there were public allegations made on TikTok by a user who has since removed their original videos, I believe, due to like harassment, public speculation. But you can find her original copy of her TikToks like all over the place. It's not hard to find. But she basically alleged that Andrew Callahan had met up with her and they had gone out together. She had made it clear that she was just there as friends, that it would not be sexual. They went to a bar, they got some drinks. He apparently, according to her, really tried to push alcohol on her, and then after they had gone to the bar, basically, and I'm trying to use sort of soft language with this, but maybe sort of read between the lines of what I'm implying with this, is he pushed the issue sexually with her until she said yes. And people were like, well, this is kind of a one-time thing. She called him an abuser, which is like, does this even, like, does like asking, will you have sex with me over and over and over again, like one time count as abuse? Like, doesn't really seem to make sense. or also that she had eventually said yes, and so, like, does it, you know, you said yes, so what is he supposed to do? And then it turned out that that was far from the only time it had happened, because it never is. There's never any time, honestly, maybe I shouldn't say this, but anytime you hear one story of somebody acting like this, whether it be from here over to like a Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein territory, it's almost never a one-time thing. It's almost always an ongoing pattern of behavior. So, Andrew Callahan, that allegation came out, and then it resurfaced in a second TikTok that other people were saying, I knew people who had experience with him. Like, friend of a friend had said this, and he apparently had a reputation both where he went to high school in Seattle, and he's like 3 years younger than me, and I didn't go to high school here. I went to high school on the East Coast, so I have no idea what he was about. I had never heard of his reputation before. He probably had a reputation even in like high school, and then when he went to Loyola in New Orleans, he had a reputation as being kind of a pushy, heavy drinker with probably an alcohol problem. And then it came out that there were more women who had more stories of meeting him on dating apps, or him DMing them, or them DMing him, meeting up in a city, him having this routine he would do kind of as a pattern of behavior of, oh man, I don't have a place to go. I had a problem with my crewmates. I had a problem with my people I'm staying with. Like, can I stay with you? And then they would meet up. They'd hang out. Even when the person made it very directly clear, like, this is not about sex. I'm not going to have sex with you. He would still push the issue after they had been drinking or doing other things. Or even in a relationship with somebody that was already sexual, like, he would not really take no for an answer. He would always try to push it and make it happen and guilt people into it. It's really unfortunate. So this guy clearly has like an ongoing problem of consent issues per these allegations. And why I'm bringing it up now is because after I filmed a video talking about these things in detail and reading like this little summary just right here, like if you don't know anything about this story, it's not really going to make sense, but I'm going to do a video that's going to come out over this weekend, and it's going to be about these allegations. It's going to be about, you know, news articles, screenshots, videos, like all the evidence that we have, at least had, according to like 3 days ago. But now even more's come out, so it's already outdated, because I found out that apparently last week at some point he did a video that he did not put on his main channel, can't imagine why, that was him at Folsom Street Fair. I'm so pissed, because last year I would have been so stoked for him to go to Folsom Street Fair, and if I had been there, like if I would have seen the crew, I could have talked to him, I could have like kind of told him like what was going on, like it could have been like a really beautiful way to introduce like a huge audience to BDSM and talk about like what this fair is about. Because I think it's very easy to get the impression that like Folsom Street Fair is like a debaucherous, hedonistic street party where you dress crazy and you have sex in public or whatever. And that's not really what it's about. Like, yes, there's nude people. Yes, people go there to piss on each other in public or whatever. But it's also a really huge AIDS fundraiser. It originally started actually as, in its original form, as actually a response to the gentrification of that part of San Francisco, of the fact that working class people were getting pushed out of that area, and them trying to resist it by basically saying like, this area of San Francisco is like very diverse and very important to us, like we're here, we're gonna defend it, yada yada. There's like a whole history on the Folsom Street Fair website about this, and it would have been nice to have to talk about that. But he was posting a bunch of clips of this on his clip channel that I found by just sheer luck. I wasn't even looking for him specifically. I was just looking for new BDSM content that had come out. And it turns out he talked to like an ABDL person. He talked to like somebody that had like a piss play fetish. What else was on there? Somebody in a DS relationship. There were a couple other ones as well. Oh, Pony Player. There was only furries in the background, at least on one occasion, which is interesting because when I went to Folsom, I don't think I saw any furries, and that maybe is a weather thing. I gotta be honest. I think if you're going to Folsom and it's a cold September that year, you're probably gonna see fursuiters. But if it's a warm year, like when I went last, you're probably not gonna see fursuiters because why would you want to wear a full ass fursuit in 100-degree weather? You're probably not going to. So I'm like concerned that this man who has a history of hooking up casually via dating apps, DMing fans when he's going to places nearby. And also, Folsom has a shit ton of after parties. Folsom has like any bar, any BDSM venue, anything within a 20-minute drive of Folsom, and anything BDSM related in the whole of San Francisco is having after parties and pre-parties and weekend events and galas and brunches and drag shows and everything else you can imagine the weekend of Folsom Street Fair, because it's so huge. And they almost always, from my experience, involve a lot of drinking, a lot of alcohol. It's oftentimes at bars. And so there's this fucking guy that's in my people's territory, all right? He's a known consent violator, just bopping around in SF wherever he wants to go to film people, and then probably afterwards get blacked out drunk at a bar and like DM fans and then like hook up with them, and maybe it's consensual, but maybe also not so consensual. I'm very worried. I'm like, oh God, like BDSM people. Also, I hate this part. He said that he got tased, but it was actually to zapper, which is like, it's a static electricity, like zapping thing. It's on the surface of the skin. Not in any way like actually being tased. It's only related in that they're both electricity, and that's basically it. But he had that happen to him too. It's like BDSM people are like so much about consent and negotiation and yes means yes and no means no and safe words and all of that good stuff, and here's this freaking guy who struggles to understand any of that, and it makes me upset. And so now I'm gonna have to do probably a whole second video, and let me know if you guys are interested in this, because I'm kind of on the fence of like if I should do this or not, because I don't have access to like the full video, because if I repost that stuff from Patreon, I could get in trouble with Patreon, and I could get in trouble with YouTube. So I don't want to have that happen, obviously. And I almost want to react to like his clips and like, how do you go to Folsom Street Fair and then like immediately afterwards be accused of at least like 5 years worth of ongoing consent issues, and then like go to that entire place and apparently never have a single conversation about how consent and BDSM interact, even though one of the first clips that he posted, or maybe this was actually the one I first saw, maybe it wasn't the first one he posted, like the first big clip he had was of a dominatrix shocking him, and even though she's like, I don't know, she's maybe like 25, 26, and even though she's younger than I am, she was still like, is it okay if I do this? Like, it was very clear consent, very clear boundaries, really good representation of that kind of a conversation, and we apparently absorbed absolutely none of it, and it makes me upset. Anyways, that's my thoughts currently on what's in the pipeline. I don't remember why I started talking about that. Oh, because all the news is really hard to keep up with, because it's Andrew Tate, Andrew Callahan. What's something else happened? Oh, the Brick and Morty guy, Roland. Josh Roland. It's a J name. I don't remember Roland, whatever his name is, which is also like, he talked a lot about kink, and like, do I need to cover the fucking, god damn it, why is it didn't happen so much last year, but apparently we have a biannual kink-related Predator event happen, where like 2 years ago it was Armie Hammer and Marilyn Manson, and now this year it's the Roland guy from Rick and Morty and Andrew Callahan, and then sort of Andrew Tate, although Andrew Tate's like an ongoing issue so I can't even really say that it's like a breaking news from this year. Why is it every year in January and February there's a biannual fucking famous people doing weird shit and framing it as being a kink thing, and that it's okay because it's a kink. And I feel like this point maybe got a little bit lost in my Andrew Tate video originally, but I'll just say this for the record. I am aware that Andrew Tate does not think about dominance and submission in the way that I think about them. I'm aware of that, however, the reason why I brought it up originally and decided to make a response is because his fans have always used it was kinky sex. Oh, she's just a submissive. He's a dom. He's like this, as a defense for his actions. In addition to the fact that he is using BDSM language in a way that to a vanilla person is like indistinguishable from, you know, misogyny versus a consensual BDSM thing. So I felt that like it was really important to talk about how I see, like, regardless of if you're using the terms submissive and dominant in like a BDSM way or in your like own invented separate way, the basis of it always has to be on consent and respect for both parties. And if you don't respect the person and you're not doing a good consent practice, I can't help you. You know, I can't, like, there has to be some kind of a baseline, you know, some kind of universal baseline. And for me, that universal baseline is respect and consent. And when you don't have that, then you are doing assault, in my opinion. Like, that's like a really clear dividing line. So I don't know what's going on. Andrew Tate's just, yeah, I just want to make it clear that, like, I know that he's not thinking about the, like, dom and sub in the same way that I would use them, and I'm not trying to, like, talk past him or, like, assume he's using it in a, like, I was never under the impression that Andrew Tate thought he was a dom in a BDSM sense and just didn't know what the word actually meant. I don't think he cares about BDSM or consent or safety or any of the things that go into our community or participating in it, but he is very aware of how the language is used and perceived, and is more than happy to say that he's dominant or an alpha male and use those things synonymously as a way to excuse his behavior to the public and to give his fans an easy way to defend him. Because what had happened years ago when he was on a British TV show called Big Brother, and he apparently was actually kicked out for being investigated in the UK for rape. And if you've been following news in the UK, or if you're a UK citizen, it would not surprise you to know that when those things are being investigated, they somehow dropped the charges and decided to not go forward with anything, even though they literally had voice note recordings of him saying things and text messages and all kinds of other evidence going on and testimony as well from more than one person. But there was a video that they sort of at least blamed his release from the show on. I don't know if he's actually fired, but I'll say release. And it was a video of him. It was an Eastern European woman using, what would that be exactly? I guess it would be ethnic. It probably would be some ethnic slurs against somebody of Eastern European descent, slapping her around, throwing her on the bed, whipping her with a belt, you know, across the bottom. Stuff that very much can be BDSM play. But the way that he did it was like, oh, no, this isn't like a role play thing for you. This isn't like a fun thing you do, both you and your partner like it. You're doing this because you think this woman is stupid and you hate her and you want to control her. This isn't like a fun, yay, we both like this, even when we're role playing that we don't like it, we still like it. Like, no. There was the Andrew Tate's vibe in that was not like a, I'm doing this and I'm in control emotionally of my actions. It was, I'm doing this because I hate this person and they deserve to be, like, brutalized by me. And if they go any farther, I will hurt them even more. And it's like, it was just very weird to watch. And of course, he said that this was just like consensual BDSM. And then the woman who he did this to also came out and said that it was like sexy, fun BDSM times. And you know what? I believe her. I believe that what she experienced was fine for her. She enjoyed it. She liked it. And that's one of the fucked up things about people like this, is when somebody sells you what they're doing as, oh, you have these BDSM fantasies of you want to be spanked, you want to be spit on, you want to be called names, you want to do this. Oh, I'll for sure do that for you. Or they just start doing it without saying anything first, but because it pushes certain buttons for you, you're into it. And they just go, oh, this is what BDSM is. This is how it's supposed to be. He's acting like this controlling, abusive asshole, but that's what being a dom is. And so this is great, and I love it. It's hot and fun and sexy. But because you haven't been exposed to anything else, you don't actually realize that's not how it normally goes. And even when somebody is spitting on you, slapping you around, slapping you in the face, whatever, pulling you by your hair across the bed, that it's meant to be done consensually with negotiation and mutual respect first, and not because he hates you because you're a woman and he thinks that you're stupid and that your entire gender is worthless. Like, there's a base difference between somebody who does BDSM when they respect their partner and somebody who does it because they're a raving misogynist. And he very much falls into the latter category. So I believe that what happened to her specifically in that instance was probably consensual. She probably liked it. It could be a case of like she didn't even really know that it could be any different. And there are certainly lots of people that are into BDSM and BDSM adjacent things where they like the force and the anger and all of that. I'm not trying to invalidate that. But if you're doing that same thing to every woman you interact with, there's going to be a pretty big percentage of women that are actually not into that. That's not consensual for them. And I've talked about this in videos before. The sort of this like post hoc idea of consent as being, I just love how she's been sleeping in the ideal position this whole time. Can we just do a little like claps for Bandit in the chat? Can you do some like clapping emojis for her just being like the bestest girl this whole stream? She's been doing an awesome job. I was worried she wouldn't be on camera at all, but she's just like, she found her spot, and I love her. But anyways, with Andrew and with women like this, this post hoc idea, maybe this isn't the right way. I don't know if that's the right way of saying this, but let me know if there's a better way of framing this. This idea of like post hoc evaluating consent, where if I enjoyed it, it was consensual, and if I didn't like it, it wasn't consensual. That's a really weird line to have, because you can consent to things that you don't enjoy, and you cannot consent to things and your body can find physical pleasure in them. So if the only way we're evaluating consent is whether or not it was enjoyable or not, then we get into weird territory around like, oh, but you had an orgasm as a man being sexually assaulted, and so you couldn't have possibly been assaulted because you enjoyed it enough to orgasm. Like, no, it's not, no. That's not, consent is not premised on pleasure. But it's interesting to me that vanilla people, I think, sometimes kind of frame their encounters, especially without previous conversation or in the moment conversation, as like, as long as I enjoyed it, what happened to me was consensual, but if I didn't enjoy it, then I didn't consent. Like, that creates some weird things happening. So, and I think with lots of women that experienced Andrew Tate or people like him, certainly you will do this kind of thing to women, and some of them will just enjoy it and go along with it, and certainly that's how he's been able to get people like, I think, Georgiana, whatever her name is, like his bottom bitch, his like #1 girl, who was basically his Ghislaine Maxwell, who recruited for him. Like, certainly she enjoyed what was happening, or at least found it prudent business-wise and was willing to tolerate it. I don't know. All right, thank you for the claps in the chat for Banditi. I should have brought treats up with me to have right here so I could feed her on camera. We'll do that next time. She's doing just the best work. Just the best work of all time. So yeah, it's very interesting to me how consent is thought of in that way, and how you can have women, of course, that will enjoy this, and then other women where you do it to them and they hate it, and you don't care that they hate it, and you do it anyways, and in fact you do it more because you like how much he doesn't like it. Yeah. And like, you don't have to enjoy BDSM, right? You don't have to enjoy BDSM. You can negotiate and do BDSM scenes and not like them. That's perfectly fine. As is oftentimes said, you're allowed to have a bad scene. And if you want to do something for the catharsis and the suffering and whatever, and that means you don't physically enjoy what happens, that's great. That's your business. All right? That's totally fine. But that involves talking about it and consent. So, yeah. That's like telling someone that they like being tickled because they laughed. Yeah, it's very much that idea. So yeah, it's between all of these various fuckwads. The news is just full of bullshit the last week or so. Am I forgetting any like big news things? It was Justin Roiland. Josh? What the fuck is his name? Something Roland. Whatever his name is. I don't even need, because that was the other thing, right? Is like, if I don't know who here in the chat like knows that story fairly well. I've looked into it a little bit. My understanding is Justin Royal. I'm just gonna. I should just look it up. I'm just gonna. Okay, I don't want to get this wrong 10 million times. I think it's Royland or Roland, and then Justin or whatever. I had to be honest. I used to watch Rick and Morty with like typically boyfriends I had that enjoyed watching it, but I got really turned off from Rick and Morty. There were a couple of episodes. Okay, so it's Justin. Is it Roland or Royland? Because it looks like it's Royland with an I. Maybe you don't pronounce the I. I feel like I've heard most people say Roland, like as though the I doesn't, like you don't, like you just kind of gloss over the I. But it looks like it's Royland. Whatever. So like Rick and Morty, a lot of people enjoyed it. It was like definitely really hot when I was in college for sure. Like a lot of people enjoyed watching it because that was like the first couple seasons was on when I was in college still. And I got really turned off from it because there were a couple of episodes that were like, yes, it's edgy humor, but this is like you didn't push a boundary. You just wanted to have a plot line that was about a child being sexually assaulted. Like multiple episodes that involved detailed either implication of or outright showing the assault of a child, which is obviously very disturbing. And I was just like, you know what? It's not really. It was always like the humor was never really like, I don't know. It was not obviously written with women in mind, so maybe that's just me. But he apparently, surprise, surprise, also liked to DM with fans, also liked to message fans, typically very drunkenly, though not always, and talk to them about how they were jailbait, and talk about his kinks, and threesomes, and orgies, and yeah, it just turned out to be a real creepy, creepy guy. And I have not seen anyone really defending him. And maybe that's just the part of the internet I'm on. Compared to Tate, where there's a legion of people. If you Google or YouTube search Andrew Tate right now, I guarantee you all of the most, like, the top videos you're going to see in a search result, not like maybe the most viewed ones, but the ones that are going to get pushed up there, almost all of them are going to be, like, leaked information, shows conspiracy around Andrew Tate, or like free Andrew Tate, or, you know, a proof that AI was used to make those fake Andrew Tate messages. Like, it's going to be all that kind of stuff. So the internet as a whole, like, there's definitely a big machine kind of defending Andrew Tate and saying, oh, this is a misunderstanding. He's just really into BDSM, and, you know, everyone else is framing him because they're, you know, they wanted his money, or they hate how successful he is, or they're jealous, or whatever. Whereas, like, Justin, I have not really seen that much in terms of defense of him, even though he is also, he would, like, ingratiate himself with teenage fans of the show and then talk about his kinks and their kinks, and it was, like, really, like, it reminded me of being, like, on the, like, it reminded me of what I imagine being on, like, Fur Affinity would be like. Like, if you were, like, a teenager on Fur Affinity or some other furry website, and you were talking to, like, an adult that was, like, aggressively into their kinks via their fursona, that's what I imagine those interactions would be like. It was very creepy, and yeah, he would call people jailbait and whatever. So anyways, could everyone please keep it in their pants? Just do not let, okay, this is the rule. If you are a male celebrity that is popular with teenagers, you are not allowed to be on social media. No Snapchat, no disappearing Instagram DMs, all right? You are going analog. You are answering physical fan mail, or you are not interacting with your fans at all. I'm sorry. No. Like, we cannot trust anyone. I've never really watched South Park, but I believe you. That's the reason why I hate South Park. The episode where they treat Butters like a literal dog made me feel nauseous and almost cry. Awful. Yeah, that sounds really fucked up. I think I know who Butters is as a character. I just remember thinking that it was a stupid show and I never watched it. Are you going to do a video on the Justin Roiland situation? Well, first of all, I have to figure out how his last name is pronounced. I don't know, actually, because I'm doing one on Andrew Callahan. I feel like I probably should do one that's like a deeper dive into Andrew Tate. And also having to do, and I gotta do an update to Marilyn Manson as well, that like I've had in the works for a while. And then Justin Roiland's, like, I feel like his is pretty well covered, but I feel like it's worth addressing, like, the kink aspect of it in terms of, like, being kinky doesn't make you a sex pest. Like, having kinks does not mean you text literal teenagers about them. I don't know. Like, is it worth it? Like, would that be a good thing to do, or what? I hate the term jailbait. That's literally just him saying I'm attracted to a minor. Yeah, no, And I think at one point he was on a podcast, and there's like, if you go through Reddit, there's lots of people that have like uploaded these things. You can find them like fairly easily. But there was a podcast essentially of him like defending. Oh God, he sounded like Matt Walsh. That was the other big drama, is like whatever's going on with the right wing right now with like Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire, Daily Stormer. What the fuck is it called? The one that Ben Shapiro's on. Actually, it probably can't be a neo-Nazi website because Ben Shapiro's on it. So, probably not the Daily Stormer. It's probably the Daily Wire. That whole drama was going on. I don't know why I brought that up exactly. Oh, because Matt Walsh. Because Matt Walsh is just, he's having a hell of a time on Twitter. But not so much of a time that's going to make me forget about how he said a very similar thing about how it's just obviously, like, I don't know where they get this idea from. Like, who tells these men these things? Essentially, that they have this picture in their heads that in ye olde medieval times, 14-year-olds were having babies constantly. They were getting married at 12, and it's just natural for older men to be attracted to teenage women, and to deny that is to deny biological reality. So actually, being attracted to 13-year-olds doesn't make you a pedophile. It's just normal. And that's what adult human men are supposed to do. And it's like, she has braces. She looks 11. She looks like one of the girls that Justin was texting. She shared a picture of what she looked like during that time period. She had braces. She was 16 but looked 13. She looked very young. And he was like, you look sexy. Like, I get that, like, people hate Belle Delphine. I don't know why am I bringing this into it. I know that people don't like Belle Delphine because of she acts like she dresses like a teenager, she has the fake braces, yada yada, and it's like, I don't think Belle's not creating that demand. It's a demand that's already there, if nothing else. Very, very bizarre stuff. He is hilariously awful. I don't even know, like, what's going on. Like, just imagine being, like, so confident that, like, you can be on a podcast with people and then you can say shit like, well, 14-year-olds in the medieval times were popping out babies and having sex, and so it's just natural that men would be attracted to girls that age. Like, first of all, they weren't. See, this is like a weird, like, one of the many, like, fake history things that people who don't actually like school or learning will, like, take away from learning about, like, medieval or, like, pre-Renaissance European history, is that, like, it was normal and common for, like, preteen girls to get married and have children. That is only kind of true if you look at nobility in certain countries, right? Like the Spanish nobility, because of their land laws of how they inherited property, they had a lot of, like, child bride situations, especially in Spain, but also in, like, other countries as well. I'm not sure about Italy, but definitely in England they had this problem, and in other European countries too they had this. But that was very much focused around, like, childbirth is really dangerous. We need to have an heir as soon as possible. We're gonna marry off a girl from a family that we know, like, her mom had, like, 10 kids, so we're gonna get her on the baby making train, like, as soon as possible. And that was not what the average, and we're just giving a little history lesson right now, I guess. This was not what the average peasant did. This was not accessible to even, like, anyone outside of nobility, really, like, for most of human history, both because of, like, disease and nutritional issues meant that girls were not having their periods until much later. So, like, the average period, like, I know, like, Sweden or something, like, it was, like, 16 to 18 was, like, fairly common for, like, Nordic countries for, like menarche. And I think even in more developed or more like temperate parts of Europe, like 14, 15, 16 was like pretty normal for menarche. And so like you wouldn't even have your first period until you were like 15, 16 most of the time if you grew up in like a typical poor rural family with like food insecurity at least occasionally. And so because of the nutritional deficits, you weren't even getting into that part of adolescence until much, much later compared to today where it's like 9 to 11 is like much more common. So you weren't even able to have kids. And then when you did get married, like you typically actually didn't get married off if you were like in a medieval like peasant family. You didn't get married off right away because you were labor for the household. And they didn't like you were a burden insofar as like typically there was maybe some kind of dowry involved, but you were labor for the household. And so they would typically, the family that you were part of, want to keep you around in order to help you. Like you would help them like work on the farm, milk the goats, whatever. You know, like you would be working for the family to maintain the household. And then eventually you'd be married off. But even then, even if you did get married off at 16, this is sexism in history abounds. Where are we in the chat? 0. We're not anywhere in the chat right now. This is like, I'm really passionate about this because this is just like men's reading of history that just like completely ignores women, and it just makes me mad. Like, we had this thing called a midwife. We actually had like a fair amount of knowledge in like what we would consider to be like the pre-scientific era of humanity. We had a fair amount of information that was like folk knowledge that women passed along through midwifery of like how children happened. And like they knew even fucking back in the 14th century that if like a 14-year-old is not really like equipped to be able to like successfully birth a child. And so like, okay, you went through the process of marrying this girl. It's expensive. Like you got it. Like you want to, at the very least, even if you think of marriage as this like economic thing and not like a love thing, which it very much was an economic decision at the time, you don't want to fuck up your investment too early, because if she gets pregnant too early, she can't actually give birth to a child. It's not going to work out for you long term. So even if you got married really young, typically people would wait before they started to have children, because even back then they knew that like preteens were not actually like great at giving birth successfully and not dying in the 14th century. And so like the average age for like first childbirth for like most women was actually like 18, 19, 20. I think it may have actually been 20. Like it fluctuated a little bit, but it was older than a lot of people assume it was for like that time period. If you guys want to read about this, it's like you can deep dive on fucking Google all you want. It's like really interesting. And I remember reading somewhere, I feel like there was like educational books around this as well that would get like passed around where like for people that were literate, where this kind of thing would be discussed. But point is that like Justin and like Matt Walsh's like fetishizing the medieval world as being full of like pregnant preteens or whatever, or like child brides, was not actually accurate outside of nobility, which had that not for like, oh, this is when you're most fertile, so act quickly. Like it wasn't like that. It was just, oh, we have to have an heir as soon as possible, and so we're locking this down. But pretty much everyone else waited, you know? Anyways. We're at now. Yes, we're at now. Anyways, there's my rant. I'm not a history major, so I was almost a history major, and then I thought, what would I do with a degree in history? And then I just decided to read about it for fun. So, you know, no hate to history majors, but unless you want to be a teacher. Not always great career prospects. Although, given I am a professional YouTuber now, so honestly, whatever I majored in school, not really that relevant. Well, it is actually. It is sometimes relevant. But, you know, we live, we learn. People will literally just say anything to justify their attraction to minors. Yes, that is true. But it's like, there's just such a poor, like, reading of... Not that I expect Matt Walsh to be great at reading history. I don't know why I expect either one of them to be, like, well-storied in these things, but... You know, it's just, I feel like we got to correct the record. Because I feel like that's a very pervasive idea even outside of those circles, like most people have this image of like, oh, like back in the day people got married at like 12 and blah blah blah. And like, but even if they did happen, like typically the actual marriage and like consummation of the marriage wouldn't happen until like much later. So, you know. Yeah, exactly. And like the obsession with fertility is weird because like, yeah, like why do we like, even if you're like 25 and you're having a kid for the first time, like it's still, you basically have, was it like a 20, if you're not on birth control, you have like a 25% chance of getting pregnant in any given cycle. Like there's like a pretty good shot of you getting pregnant within like 6 months if you are trying. Like it's not difficult. Like it's not like it goes from like easy to impossible in 5 years, or if you wait until somebody's 20 or 25. And even then, like if you look at a lot of them, we actually did research about this for a video I'm working on Patreon. A lot of the fertility data that gets cited is like from birth records from like 1848 or like the 1700s, like way older than you would expect it to be, and not as much like more recent data about like when people are having kids. And I feel like that might be skewing it to where like, yeah, like it might, if you're going off of birth records from like the 18th century, it might seem like, oh, fertility really slows down at 25, but that's also because childbirth is very deadly, especially at that time. And if you already had 7 children by 25, like you might not want to have any more kids. And like we were aware of like ways to prevent pregnancy even back then. They weren't the best methods, but you know, the pull-out method is a thing that most people can intuitively figure out. Or even like if you're really hardcore, I don't know how much people would have been doing like fertility tracking, but that was definitely like, you know, common midwife knowledge back in the day. So like, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure how accurate this stuff is, but like, anyways, point of this section is if you're a woman and you're fucking 30, 35, whatever, actually, if you're any person who wants to have a child, your partner's age, your age, whatever, don't panic about it so much as what the media makes it seem like. Your fertility is not actually drop off a cliff at 30 or 28 or 32. Like, you still got a pretty good chance. It's when you get into like pre-menopause, when you get into like the 40s, that you start to like 38 plus, I think you start to run into some more like significant issues where you might need some like medical intervention. But if you're in your like late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s even, like you're probably all right. Don't let Matt Walsh pressure you into having children at 18 because he's fear-mongered you into believing that like women are destroying their opportunities to have families because, you know, the woke media is telling them to not have kids, and then they hate their life at 32 because they're alone and have cats. And listen, if I had to choose a life where either I had seven children by the age of 27 or I had 7 dogs, I would choose dogs. It's not even a competition. It would be fine. I love dogs. If I could have 7 of this, I would have a happy life. I would be fine. My mom had me and my sister at 39 and 42. Yeah, I know lots of people that had like babies at 41, 42 and like in their late 30s. It happens all the time. It happens all the freaking time. No need to give in to white moral panic about, oh my God, the people, they're not having babies. We're gonna be outbred by the other people. Like, no, just calm down. Just, we got enough people on this planet. I'm not really sure we need that many more. TBH. All right, let's get into some actual questions. Let's do that. Okay, sorry. Oh, wow. I've delivered fucking... We didn't even talk about anything yet, did we? Yes, this is the Bandit camera. She's beautiful. She's lovely. Yes. Fuck yeah, Bandit Cam. I'm glad that people are liking it. Questions? Any tips to have success finding partner on FetLife? My slightly sassy, my slightly sassy, but also true answer is don't. I'm sure if you guys are in the chat and you want to share, please go ahead. I'll read it out. I don't know anyone that has met a partner through FetLife by itself. I have known people that have developed partnerships starting through FetLife when they were like local, went to an event together, matched on FetLife later on, started talking through that, or they meet on FetLife and then meet up in real life at a public event like pretty shortly afterwards. I don't know anyone that's ever met anyone on FetLife that just like had like a long-term, long-distance internet relationship. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm just saying I don't have any personal experience with that arrangement of things, and I'm sure it does happen. And I just feel like there's so many other dating app alternatives where you can be like pretty open about being kinky, to where like FetLife is just awful. It is awful for dating. It really truly is, guys. Like FetLife is not good for dating. It's not good for messaging people, finding people. Like groups are usually overran by people looking for hookups, trains, orgies, cuckoldry, that kind of a thing. And it's really hard to find people that are like legitimately actually into real BDSM things, that actually want to have a BDSM relationship. I am sure that it happens, and especially probably was more likely to happen 5-10 years ago on FetLife, but these days I genuinely really don't know. I would probably say you're better off looking on a regular dating app like Field or OkCupid and being open about being kinky on that, and then meeting people that way. But that would be me. That would be my advice. Otherwise, I think if you really want to find a partner through FetLife, the way that you would do that is to have like a pretty detailed profile. Make sure you've got like a good image of yourself on your profile as your picture, not a clip art thing, not a stolen photo from Google, not a meme, none of that shit. An actual photo of you, and by you, I mean like the side of your face, or toys, or your bondage equipment, or your latex, or some kind of fetish thing you're into, like that kind of a thing. Not just like, here's a meme from whatever that I stole from Facebook, I think is funny. Like, have a good profile picture, have a detailed description of yourself on your profile, and then when you're writing out like a searching for, seeking thread, like make sure it's like a local group that's close to you. Depending on where you live, that could be your country, it could be a state you're in, it could be a city, it could be any of those things. And then when you're in that group, make sure you have a really detailed listing of like, this is what I'm looking for, here's what I'm bringing to the table, and then this is like what I'm looking for in a partner. It's really easy, I think, in a dating profile, or especially on like one of these sort of like seeking threads, to kind of make it me, and talk about what you want from the other person. Like, I'm looking for an experienced submissive who is really into bondage, that I can tie up every weekend, and wants to have a 24/7 DS relationship, and has experience doing XYZ thing. Like, it's really easy to just be like, oh, here's my laundry list for a partner, without really saying this is what you bring to the table. Here's what you've learned, how you've learned, any trainings you've gone to, classes, dungeons you're a part of, memberships you have, events you've been to, where you go regularly, like that kind of a thing, where you're saying, hey, like, I bring in this experience, this is my knowledge base, this is where I've learned from, who I've learned from, here's events that I go to, and really make yourself seem like a whole real person. And also talk about, like, especially if you want a vanilla relationship, not just a BDSM one, I really do think you got to put in stuff that's like your life stuff. Not like, here's the address of where I work, but life stuff. Like, if you want to have a vanilla life partner and a BDSM partner, you gotta have other hobbies and things you like besides BDSM, right? What kind of music do you listen to? What's your favorite kind of date to go on? Are you into coffee, wine, beer? Do you watch sports? Do you go hiking? Do you have 3 dogs? Are you a cat person? Do you raise llamas? Like, I don't, like, do you repair antique cars on the weekend? Do you collect, teacups, whatever? Like, just pick anything. And just also talk about like your other hobbies and interests outside of BDSM, so you can see what you connect on. But I really don't think that especially with all the options we have today outside of FetLife, that kind of thing is like super effective, just because you are sort of hoping in the knowledge, in the face of the knowledge, that most of these groups are overran by people that are like, hot chick waiting in hotel room on 500 West Broadway wants to be fucked. Like, come to my room. The door will be unlocked. I need somebody to use me and abuse me. XOXO. And it's like, you gotta go through, like, that's like most group seeking threads or like that kind of a thing. And so it's really hard to stick out. And most people don't have the tolerance to see that, like, the kind of spam over their feed, so they don't tend to like really pay attention to listings on like personal things. I feel like if you want to use FetLife for dating, you really got to use it to find events to go to in person and go to the in-person events, right? Speed dating events, munches, social groups, discussion groups, parties, all of that stuff. But yeah. Anyways, I want to be very clear. I really don't think that FetLife is the best for finding a partner on, like, on the website. It's good for finding the events to meet people at, and it's good about being clear about what your kinks are. But I feel like FetLife, in my experience, works better as like a bridge when you've met somebody somewhere else. So like, I tend to use FetLife, like if I'm talking to somebody on a dating app and they're kinky, like I'll show it to them and I'll be like, oh hey, we've been talking for a while, like, and it says you're into kink, like, do you have a FetLife account? And then I'll share my FetLife with them, and then I'll get their FetLife, and then we can see where our kinks and if our kinks overlap. So yeah, like I actually had somebody earlier today I met on, not earlier today, sorry. I talked to them a little bit before the holidays, and then I was busy, and so I haven't messaged them back because I'm a terrible person. And they had a FetLife account. I shared mine, vice versa. And, you know, we saw each other's stuff, and then they asked me out for bubble tea. So, you know, haven't said yes yet, but I saw that message, and I haven't replied to it. So I probably need to. But yeah, that's my advice. I'm not trying to be sassy, just trying to give you realistic expectations for dating on FetLife, because as you said, right, like the groups are very much ran by men, and most groups have veered towards a certain flavor of people like looking for dominatrixes, fetish things, orgies, one night stands, like that kind of a thing, not really actual relationships. And every once in a while, depending on where you live, you will get lucky where there is a group that is like pretty heavily moderated, that is for people looking for like DS relationships or power exchange relationships more generally, or, you know, ongoing play partnerships, and they heavily filter out the like hookup orgy type things. But it's hard to find things like that, you know. Hard to find stuff like that. Right? I'm going to adjust the BANDIT camera. Why don't you want to face the camera, little dog? They can't see your sweet sleeping face. This is going to be a regular fixture on the broadcast now, so even if she's not, it's like when you watch like a panda cam at a zoo. You never know where you're going to get that day. Sometimes it's all fluffy butt, and sometimes it's sweet, cute little face, and you just don't know what you're going to get. I feel like FetLife is like kinky LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm not really on LinkedIn. I used it very briefly when I had like an actual professional career, but not in a very long time. But I feel like that's probably accurate. Yeah. The ratio of men versus women on Fet is like 50 men for 4 girls. So if you're a girl, get bombarded by messages. I'm actually not sure how the gender ratio of FetLife works out. I mean, I think that probably depends on like how you meet people and where you associate. I feel like it's pretty fairly evenly split between male and female where I live. I don't know. I mean, my interactions has been like, I tend to mostly be friends with other women on FetLife more so than men. Like, a lot of men use FetLife for like jerking off and porn shit. So even if I'm friends with them, I unfollow them so I can't see them liking porn at 2 a.m. So I tend to mostly interact with other women and like also like non-binary people, trans people, etc. like on FetLife more so than like cis men. I thought the plural was dominatrices. I mean, I don't know. I mean, let's be honest. I don't really know anyone that actually prefers using the word dominatrix for themselves at all. Most of them use the term doms. So, like, DOMMES. Sometimes they get pronounced like dame, dames. I've literally heard pretty much everything else except for dominatrix. So, yeah. Oh, no, I didn't think that you thought sass was a bad thing. I'm just being, we haven't streamed for a while. I'm trying to be realistic. So happy to make the start of a live. I saw about half of your first caller video. Was going to finish it up tonight, but this notification came up. Well, thank you so much for being here, Echo. If you have any questions about the video so far, let me know. It's 2 a.m. here. I have no routine. Well, thank you, Imogen. That's a lovely name. I love the name Imogen. I feel like we don't have that very oftentimes here in America. Normally our live streams are about 2 hours. So we have another like hour-ish left. Your most recent collar video made me feel a little self-conscious and silly about how attached I am to wear my collar. LOL. Well, okay. I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to say this because I never want anyone to feel bad about their personal choices. Whether it's wearing a collar, not wearing a collar. My mission in making a video of me talking about how I feel about wearing a collar or not and trying to deconstruct community expectations versus my own personal feelings and attachment, and realizing that I was like chasing a standard and an expectation versus my own personal thoughts and feelings about it. That's just me and my own process. If you get a lot of enjoyment personally out of wearing a collar and it's super connective and it makes you feel really good on a day-to-day basis and enhances your relationship, like, please do that. Like, please wear a collar. Do not let me discourage you in any way. I just felt like there needed to be a conversation that we don't oftentimes have, because usually the conversation is, I've been wearing this collar for 20 straight years. I've never even taken it off to go to the dentist. And every day it's like feeling my master's warm hands around my throat or like whatever. And like it's very romantic, very idealized, very looked up to. And I wanted to just put it out there that you don't have to have that relationship to wearing a collar. And the fact that we as a community have that, not individually, but as a community, we have that perspective on wearing a collar, I find to be very interesting, because when you look back on the history of BDSM and like where certain things came from, as far as the straight BDSM community is concerned, I can't speak to gay or lesbian sides of the community, I'm not sure, but it really comes down to like the Turian collars in Planet of Gore and the Story of O. And those have collars as at least a feature of those universes and those worlds. And we kind of just like adopted certain parts of those things into the BDSM aesthetic, or like what people enjoy about BDSM and what they want to represent their BDSM with. And this was just one way of doing that. And we just kind of latched on to collars and adopted them, and we decided to make them a big deal when, on like a community level again, and it doesn't have to individually be that way. It does not have to be that way in the slightest. It can really be, it can be a personal thing, it can be deeply meaningful and symbolic. I really feel like it's the same as getting a tattoo, honestly. Oh, little toe beans again. Yes. I really do feel like it is the same as a tattoo, where some people are just like, I was drunk in Santa Monica and I got a tattoo of a cactus, and that's just a tattoo of a cactus. And like, it doesn't really mean anything other than like, it was kind of a cool impulse thing to do. And for other people, tattoos are like, this is a memorial tattoo for my grandmother and she helped raise me, and I got this particular flower because she always grew it in her garden and it meant so much to her, and I used to help her garden, and yada yada. And like, both of those things are getting tattoos, right? Getting a drunk cactus tattoo or getting a meaningful, like, in abuelita, like, tattoo, right? Like your precious little grandmother. Like, getting one of those tattoos is all getting a tattoo. But I feel like people, like, almost, and I don't have tattoos, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but I feel like my understanding of it is people sort of expect more of the latter, of like tattoos being a deeply meaningful thing or like a symbolic thing. and that they represent something or it's important in some way. You know, it's like, oh yeah, it's about my grandmother, my uncle, my brother, my sister, my pet growing up, you know, my childhood cat, you know, again, like my abuelita, you know, that kind of a thing. But it's not always that way. And I feel like with collars, like people expect there to also be this like very deep symbolism attached to it. And you can both wear collars in a casual way and also have a serious relationship that doesn't have a collar attached to it. So I guess I'm just trying to say that I'm not trying to alienate anybody from wearing a collar or feeling a certain way about it. I just always want the definition in the room to be bigger. I want there to be room both for people who find collars to be deeply meaningful and important, but also for people that I want there to be room for people to choose not to wear collars and not have that impact how they see themselves or the level that they've like reached in BDSM or the importance of their relationship. Follow up on the cocktail party. Oh, there we go. It was so much fun. The stress and nerves disappeared right away. We all played after one of the best nights. They called me the puppy of the group. Oh, that's so sweet, Andrew. Thank you for the update. That sounds really fun. That's so good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And then even Bendita's giving you a little stretch right there. She liked the story too. That was great. Thank you for sharing. All right, let's do some more questions. Everyone's saying hello to Banditi, the Bandolina, all of her many nicknames. So many nicknames. Oh, your self-collar video really helped me out. Thank you for making videos. Yeah, of course. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Bandit does wish that I had a cat. She would lose it. She is obsessed with cats. Not in a like, she's obsessed with squirrels, but in like a barking, I need to eliminate them from the premises, red alert way. And she has certain squirrels that she has a truce with that she will just kind of hang out around, like the normal squirrels. Like she's actually sort of like gotten along with certain squirrels and will permit them to be around now because she's not scared of them anymore. But like new squirrels from like across the neighborhood, no. Only certain squirrels are permitted. With cats, she wants to be near them so badly. Like she wants to smell them and wag her tail at them and just be next to them. She doesn't want to do anything else. She just wants to be next to a cat. It's like the funniest thing. Is it normal to feel weirded out by BDSM? I feel like it takes too much effort to be into BDSM. I feel like definitely being weirded out by it is like the normal like response to that. But I think it's important to remember, and I try to talk about this in videos, but I don't know how much it actually like gets through to people, is you can do BDSM on any possible level you want to, right? You can be a committed lifestyle person. You do BDSM with like your partners on a regular basis. You have like a social group that involves BDSM. You go to dungeons, parties. You kind of participate in a more direct, regular way. But you can also do BDSM just in the bedroom. You can do it every once in a while. You can try it once and never do it again. You can only do it on your birthday. You can do it for special occasions. Like, it really is whatever you want it to be. Anywhere from, like, I get a birthday spanking, like, once a year, and I occasionally get spanked during sex, like, every once in a while, all the way over to, like, I help organize a munch and I go to this one BDSM party every Friday night or whatever. Like, it really is whatever you want it to be. And some people participate at a very high level and other people don't. And no matter what way you do it, it is always valid. And I think this is something that kind of gets lost on like kind of younger social media platforms, like on TikTok, where a lot of people just sort of think of BDSM either as being like really extreme and like dark and intense, like, oh, if you're into BDSM, you are into being in like a dark dungeon in a gimp suit, or like a woman in like a latex outfit like hits you with a cane until you like scream for mercy, and like that's what BDSM is. But that's not, like, that is sometimes, but like BDSM is so varied. It can be funny, it can be silly, it can be intense, it can be lighthearted, it can be spiritual, it can be emotional, it can be a catharsis, it can be so many things, right? And everyone's going to have their own different way of doing it, or some people do different things with different people. Like sometimes they're really casual and it's just kind of fun and silly, and other people do it very seriously, and it really does, again, like it exists on a spectrum. So you really, like, if you're intimidated by the idea of like you have to meet this certain threshold to like be into BDSM, that's not really true. Like BDSM very much exists. Like as long as you're following kind of those like core underlying principles of like consent and mutual respect, that is most important. And then like what level you do it after that point is your own business, right? And I feel like there was a different point I wanted to make with that. But if it comes back to me, I'll say it because I don't remember what it was. I just feel like acknowledging things existing as like a diverse thing is important. Because so many people feel like they just feel so blocked in, you know? They feel like, well, I can't really be this thing because I don't do it enough, or if I do this, I have to commit to this in this way. It's like, no, you can just do whatever you want. Like, just do it however you want. Do it whatever way makes you happy, you know? Oh no, no fun things. Have had a migraine for 3 weeks straight. Getting a brain scan soon. Oh, I hope that brain scan goes okay. Oh my gosh, that sounds very, very awful. Migraines are no fun. KB got a cat. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you for getting a cat. I like cats. Oh, there's a little paw movement again. Stretch. There we go. Boop. I will bring spring as soon as I can, I promise. Ooh, you made your very first toy. It's a sensation toy made with guitar strings. Used it on a friend this morning. It's a runaway success. That's how I'm doing tonight. That sounds awesome. Is it like loose guitar strings, like not under tension, or is it like a bunch of like really like tense guitar strings? Either way, it sounds interesting. Ooh, going to my first play party this weekend. Nervous and excited. Well, I hope that goes well for you, Ember. Good luck, and hopefully the story about the cocktail party from earlier will indicate to you, I would say 95% of the time, I get a comment from somebody who comes on a live stream or in a video and says, I'm going to my first whatever this weekend and I'm nervous. They almost always come back and say, I had a really good time. It was super fun. I met people. It was really great. I'm so glad I went. So just rest assured that based on my anecdotal evidence, as much as that's worth, most people end up having a good time. And you can always leave if you don't feel comfortable. This is the big thing, right? If you're going to any kind of BDSM event, a public party, a private party, a munch, a discussion group, whatever, it doesn't matter, a whole conference. If you're going and you don't feel comfortable, if you're seeing something that you don't like, or you get kind of a weird vibe, or you thought you were going to like a BDSM party and it turns out to be like a sexy swingers party and there's not really any BDSM happening, or you're sober and there's drinking happening or whatever, you are always, always, always free to go, and you should leave if you don't feel comfortable. If it's not your vibe, not your crowd, don't force yourself to stay just because you bought a ticket or because you're already there. Like, take care of yourself, listen to that gut instinct, and if it's not feeling right, don't force it, you know? Ooh, I had my quarterly check-in with my master and revised our protocols for the new year on Monday. That sounds like some good progress. We love a regularly scheduled check-in. That is a good way of maintaining relationship structure. And I feel like maybe I should do a video soon. I feel like maybe I have this in my notes. Let me just check. I know that I'm doing a video soon on, like, I know I just filmed a video on this not long ago. I'm doing a video on, like, help for common problems for doms and tops. So that's happening soon. But I feel like I should do one for, like making power exchange better. I don't know if I have that exactly. I'll just kind of write that idea down and just make sure I haven't already done this. Making your power exchange better, parentheses, regular check-ins. I don't know if that really makes sense for like a whole video topic, but you know, we could talk about that for sure. As Red Letter Media always says, fuck you, it's January. Oh, yep, you're right. Yeah, Red Letter Media. Love them. Love them. Good stuff. Will you be doing an update video on the Marilyn Manson situation anytime soon? Yes, I will. As I kind of already said, and this was earlier in the chat, so I'm assuming I hadn't said this by this point when you asked it, but just to repeat, there's a lot going on that's like currently sort of breaking news that involves like BDSM and consent and things, and I'm trying to cover that first just because it is kind of like a hot topic, and I'm trying to, you know, strike while the iron's hot, whereas like Marilyn Manson's kind of been around for a while, and there's been a slow drip of updates, not really anything super huge. I definitely want to cover you know, the Ashley Morgan Smithline case and the situation with her lawyer, just legal representation. I want to talk about kind of what's on the horizon for upcoming cases. There is one person who's an accuser, Marilyn Manson, that so far has not filed anything legally against him. That started out even before Evan Rachel Wood came out, she was sharing her story. And, you know, I want to either talk to her directly or just share what she has done on social media, because I haven't talked about this individual, I think, in any of my videos before. And she has some very detailed stories about things that happened to her. And I want to also maybe do that as maybe a standalone video. I don't know. So an updated video is definitely coming, but it's kind of on the back burner for this exact minute, because editing those videos is kind of a time sink. And I am trying to get caught up with some other more like current news first. Okay, it was another 30 days for Andrew Tate. 30 days on top of the original 30 days. Any advice for a new couple who are both switches? Thank you. If so, this is very new. So Eden, I would love to be able to help you. That's a very broad question. So when you say advice for a new couple who are both switches, what sort of specific things do you want to know about? Like how to balance getting both of your needs met? What kind of things can you do together? What kind of switching are you doing? Like, are you top bottom? Is it like a power exchange thing? Is it sex? Is it not sex? Like, give me some more details to work with here. And I would love to answer your question about advice for a new couple where you're both switches. I would say just my general kind of baseline advice for like new couples, especially switches, is to just really make sure you're practicing open communication. Don't be afraid to compromise. Don't be afraid to say no. If your partner is really like feeling like, I want to be super dommy today, and you're feeling like, well, I don't really want to be super subby today, like you really got to stretch those muscles, working on your compromise skills and compromising, but also making sure you have firm boundaries, right? Because if you're like, no, I really can't do this date today, you got to really make sure you're being firm with that. So just, you know, being consistent with boundary setting, having open communication, and not trying to guess what the other person wants. I think oftentimes, like, especially if you have a history of having been a vanilla couple for a long time, it's really easy to fall into that pattern of, oh, I just know already, we've known each other for so long, I'm just going to guess what they want, or they want me to guess, and then going in the exact wrong direction. So just be curious, invite questions, be kind, and listen to each other, and be open and honest about where your needs are in that moment, and find some kind of communication tool so that way you can communicate when you're feeling more dom or feeling more sub or more top, more bottom, or what have you. I am still vegan. Are there any online sources for play party rule samples you'd recommend to people trying to organize a play party for the first time in a town where the community is not very conscious? Oh, a sample? I don't know. I can't think of anywhere you could go to where you just could get a sample. I would go to if I was looking for something like this, there is a place called the Consent Academy. And specifically in the realm of like having a good consent policy, I know they have some resources. I'm going to just pop this in the chat right now for you to take a look at that. That would be the closest thing, just because it is a really good outline of like procedures, disclaimers, and like you can definitely get in contact with the people who run this organization. And they do a good job of like, you know, it was the consent part of it. But otherwise, I can't think of anywhere that's like an open resource for like a example of rules. If you've gone to any other parties or events or venues where you like their rules or how they structure things, most places will have, let me just check, let's see if the CSPC has anything. Board meetings. I'm just trying to see if I can find something, because you can definitely look at different venues online and then see if they have forms available. You can kind of like look at those. Guest consent form, member agreement form. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm kind of lost the plot for a second here. What are we looking for exactly? Play party rules. So the CSPC website, and they have a bunch of different forms. I'm just going to put that in the chat as well, because this is like a public website, so I don't feel like weird sharing this. Like, just be respectful. So the CSPC website, they have a bunch of different forms. They have a release form, a house rules, and this I think is like a good starting point as well. So that's my kind of point of reference. Honestly, most of the venues around here in Portland, one of the venues I've been to didn't seemingly have anything at all. Like, it was just kind of like, all right, here's your money, here's your ticket. That was kind of weird. And then the other one, I don't think is available online, and I didn't think it was like I don't really think it was like anything to write home about in terms of like consent policy or consent practice or like having really clear-cut rules. So yeah, I don't really have any other examples to throw your way that I've like personally interacted with. So yeah, that'll be a good jumping off point, I hope. Have you ever seen someone you've known from real life in a kink setting? I saw my 7th grade journalism teacher at a munch. I don't think she recognized me since it's been over a decade, LOL. I've never had that. No, I've never run into somebody I've known from real life. I've been with people who have ran into somebody from real life, like a coworker or something, but I haven't personally experienced that before, thank goodness. All right, let's get into some more questions. I do try to answer things in the order they come in, so just like hang with me here. I'm going to try to get to everyone if I can, but you know, we get off on tangents sometimes. What are your thoughts on people, especially SWERFs? So SWERFs, if you don't know, are sex worker exclusive radical feminists. They're people who are, you know, anti-sex work. Sex work is bad. Sex work is toxic. Sex work enforces the patriarchy. Everyone who's a sex worker is being abused, you know, that kind of a thing. Anyways, they are claiming that BDSM is anti-feminist or oppressive towards women. BDSM is 100% consensual and mutually agreed upon, of course. So, what do I think about people like this? I feel sad they don't have, like, a better imagination. I feel like this sentiment is something you see kind of a more modern version of on, like, TikTok, where you get people who are like, and I talked about this in a video recently, people who are like, oh my gosh, like, isn't it so sad that people are into BDSM and they have to like be ran over by a train in order to get off? Like, that's so sad. Or why is it we've normalized being violent in bed with BDSM? Like, people have equated sexual violence with doing BDSM in a way that I obviously believe is inaccurate. So I think, first of all, a lot of them don't even really know what BDSM is, and they are assuming that things that are non-consensual violent acts are under the BDSM umbrella when they're really not. So like, you know, first of all, you got to even make sure you have the same definition of them as like what BDSM even is, which they largely don't. And then there is, like, I don't know, like I on the one hand, I kind of get what they're saying. Like, I get how the things that we do and the way that we interact doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? We're products of our culture, we're products of the time period and where we're brought up and our values. And certainly I could see why there would be a concern about like, oh my God, there's like this whole community that's enabling men to like beat women and it's seen as like a positive. Like, if that's how you're framing it, I get why that would be a legitimate concern for you. But that ignores the history of BDSM and the inherent queerness that is associated with the development of the BDSM community in North America, and obviously gay, lesbian people that do BDSM, and female dominance and male submissives, and like it really just is ignoring most aspects of BDSM to focus on one very narrow version of it. And there, there's an argument where it's like, well, even when you're a female dominant, you're doing it for the sexual pleasure of a man, before your own, and that most femdom sessions are kind of revolved around like the male submissive desires, and so technically even then it's like male pleasure is still the center, and like, there's like sort of like arguments that I think are sort of worth analyzing and looking into in that. But I think for the most part they have such a mistaken idea of what like BDSM is or is about that it's like you can't even really have an argument with them, because they don't want to have an argument. They just want to convince you that BDSM is wrong and bad, and doing BDSM is wrong and bad as a woman because it means you're reinforcing the patriarchy. But then it's like, where do we draw the line between like what's acceptable personal choice versus what you have a duty to do in order to like free yourself from like the patriarchy and to not enable that? Because it's like, yeah, okay, like I could see how if the skew of BDSM is majority dominant men, majority submissive women, and you're seeing this image of it as being like women being spanked and slapped by men, that can kind of be in some extension reinforcing kind of patriarchal norms about like gender relations in terms of who's supposed to be in power, who's supposed to give up power, who's supposed to seek power, the allure of power as a sexual or like psychologically pleasing thing. Like, again, I think that's kind of worth examining and looking into to a certain extent, but only to a certain extent, because then it's like, well, if I wear a skirt because it's feminine, if I dress femininely, if I wear pink, if I style my hair in a certain way, like where is the boundary of like acceptable bowing to the male gaze and patriarchy and norms about femininity versus just like doing things you like doing because you like doing them and they don't hurt anyone else? And for me, I've always valued, the consent practices within a BDSM framework are just like so much more elevated in terms of like, there's safe words and there's negotiations and there's consent and there's mutual respect, and you talk and talk and talk and talk about everything that you're doing, and that doesn't exist in vanilla culture. And so I actually feel safer as a woman in BDSM culture and dating and being with BDSM people, because I know that consent expectation is so much more elevated than in like everyday vanilla culture. But yeah. They basically have the view of BDSM I had when I was a teenager until I took a little bit of time to do some basic research of the fundamentals of it. Yeah, an image as opposed to freedom, liberty. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like, but there's so many other things that like reinforce, like structurally reinforce patriarchy on a regular basis. Like, I can't really say that like individual people doing BDSM is like more meaningful or as meaningful an impact as like women's unpaid labor around the home, or the gender pay gap, or like underrepresentation in certain fields or in research. Like, I don't like it's not really like you can care about multiple things at once, but like if we're putting our energy towards something, right, and we have to choose, I'm not sure that individual people doing consensual BDSM largely in their own homes is like worth worrying about in comparison to these other much larger, much more systemic problems. And I think part of the kind of mistaken concern that people like this have, that I would want to correct somebody who has this idea on. First of all, fuck anybody who's a swerf or a turf, for the record. Like, I don't care about your opinion if you're that. I'm kind of taking a more general, like, if anyone who identifies as a feminist looks at BDSM and kind of decides, oh, that has to be anti-feminist because of my ideas about it, like, what I would say about that, and kind of where certain ideas are worth thinking about in terms of, like, you know, does doing BDSM with a dominant man and a submissive woman for those people, does that have long-term ramifications on their views on feminine and masculine roles, or, you know, and gender essentialism or whatever? Like, does that actually have meaningful impact? And from what I understand of the research, doing consensual BDSM doesn't change how you feel about gender or gender roles. It doesn't make you feel like men should be the head of the household because they're the man, or that women need to submit because they're women. That doesn't come from doing BDSM. That can be underlying in the way that it is for like Andrew Tate, where that gets expressed through BDSM or BDSM-like things. But I'm not sure that like, I don't think there's any research that shows there's any sort of long-term effects where you start doing BDSM as a submissive woman and then it makes you believe that all women should be submissive or whatever. That's like your rightful place because of your gender, or that it makes you more violent towards people outside of your BDSM interactions or things like that. Like, okay, what would be the ramifications from somebody engaging in BDSM that people like this would be worried about, right? Sort of like normalization of violence, right? Desensitizing people to committing violence, like both a general sort of, you know, don't really care about choking people in the bedroom because women just like that, and then there's like, I feel comfortable doing that because I'm practiced at it and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Reinforcing stereotypical beliefs about power and control, and who's supposed to be in power and control in a relationship, and then probably a couple other things as well. And as far as I am aware, there is no indication, both anecdotally and in terms of like research or just like the intuition from other sort of related research, that would indicate that like doing BDSM makes you think differently about like your role or your proper place, or makes you disrespect your partner or think less about women. And think of anything, and I can't really look it up right now because we're in the middle of live streaming, but I feel like I saw something that actually sort of indicated that people who participate in BDSM actually tend to have more liberal and less conservative views of sex and gender compared to people that don't do BDSM. Like on average. And of course there are very conservative people that do BDSM and definitely do it because they think that women are inferior and men are superior, and this is like a way of acting out some fundamental belief about humans are supposed to be this way. But it doesn't have to be the case. For a movement that likes to support women's rights and liberties, they sure like to restrict women's rights and liberties. They do. Like, it's like sort of individual freedom and self-expression versus like, you know, dismantling norms and trying not to act in a way that reinforces certain like harms or stereotypes or things like that. But I'm not really sure how much it is like the individual's problem, you know? This like almost sort of stereotypically American sense of individual self-importance, and that like your individual actions matter more than or as much as even as like longer range systemic change. Now, and this is sort of maybe a controversial guess, but if we had, 50 years of pretty radical change in our conversations around consent and the sexual allure of power and control, and we got rid of a lot of the barriers that still exist to this day that make men and women unequal in the workforce and in terms of just like general respect and attitude towards women. I think if we had like 50 years of that where we really normalized affirmative consent and asking doesn't ruin the mood, it can actually enhance the mood, and yada yada, like ad infinitum, all the different things that we could be doing that would change how we view sex and how we view relationships and the way that we approach them. I suspect that if things were like very egalitarian personally, and we shifted how we think about consent and like sex ed and sex literacy, we would probably see an increase in the number of women that identify as switches and dominance versus submissive. And I think the same thing for men as well, because then I think men would be more like internally free to explore more emotions and interests outside of like, I'm the man, I'm in control, blah, blah, blah. Because it obviously also hurts men as well. And sort of like patriarchal stereotyping of gender roles is, obviously also harmful for the menses and the men folk. But what I would be really interested in is if we could compare individual societies in current day, let's say like, Denmark or Finland or Iceland, like one of those countries that's really well known for having a pretty egalitarian society in terms of like political representation, in terms of the workforce, workers' rights, general attitudes. If we could compare those countries with that data and their like BDSM participation and what people identify as and what roles they play versus like less egalitarian societies, like if we were looking at, for example, Japan, which kind of just never had feminism and is very much more restricted with gender roles, and like, Canada and the UK and the US and like Mexico maybe, for example. I think comparing those two things could be really interesting, and I would love to see maybe where those differences are, if there are any differences, because my hunch is that I think there would be somewhat of a difference, but I think that personal preference doesn't make you a bad person, because at the end of the day, let's say that you are somebody who's into BDSM, or like, let's say if we wanted BDSM and the values of BDSM to be something that was more normalized and mainstream in terms of consent and sexual literacy and like self-awareness and honesty and building up trust. Like, I think a lot of the things that we really value in BDSM as a group very much enhance society at large. And if anything, I think society has a lot to learn from the way that BDSM has implemented how we think about our consent practices and obtaining consent. And I think we were pretty like on the forefront as far as that's concerned. So I don't think that BDSM, I guess my very long-winded answer here, and now I'm playing with a makeup brush. I'm gonna do the little I do the like Disney corner thing. You guys remember that? If anyone was around that era of Disney Channel, they'd be like, "Hi, my name's Evie Lupine, and I'm here for the Disney Channel." And it'd be like, drawing the little mouse ears or whatever. It's actually really hard to do, especially because I'm kind of working at an angle from my camera. It would be like, "Hi, I'm here with the Disney Channel." I'd be like, "Whoop." Nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers that Disney Channel era except for me and my mid-90s babies. But yeah, I don't know. It's a complicated topic, because I want to take things in good faith, and like I think just saying the standard argument of like BDSM is fine because it's consensual and because personal choice doesn't really address the qualms of like good faith critique from people that are more like sex critical, not like swerfs or turfs where they're just like they're never going to be moved from their opinions and they're just really convinced it's bad, because like the way that they analyze the world is, consent doesn't necessarily always give the full picture, because how can you give meaningful consent when like social coercion is such like a fundamental part of like growing up as a woman in society. Like consent is like not always just like the best sheer bar to have there, and like if we just let everything up to personal choice, then to determine what was good or okay for society, there would be a lot of harms done for society because of like personal choice might be individually okay, but happening on like a wider level causes harms that maybe not fully are realized. But I am certainly not an expert on this. I am not a philosopher. I am not well versed in the rad fem arguments around this. But you know, there are many people who fortunately have done many debates and arguments about this that are more intellectual than I and more informed on this topic. So I will leave them to it, because I really do feel like for the most part this is settled. I think kind of the modern day where people get kind of messed up is people who think that BDSM is just violent sex where like a man is beating up a woman until she's like a crying little puddle in the corner. And that, you know, people do that and it's fun and consensual, but here's the thing, it happens because both people like it. It's not even just that it's consensual, but like both people get pleasure out of it, which I think is important, especially in the context of like we're thinking about sort of, you know, 70s sexual pleasure feminism, you know, where it's about freedom and you know, getting to be sexually liberated, and this is certainly maybe one aspect of that. But yeah. Oh yeah, the documentary that Defunctland did on trying to find the writer of the Disney theme, that was a really good video. I watched it when it came out. It was very good. Okay, I'm glad that people remember the Disney Channel thing. All right, hopefully that answers that question. That was kind of a ramble. But yeah, I don't think anyone who's like, I know there's another YouTuber. There's another YouTuber whose name also starts with an E. I'm not going to say who it is. Another YouTuber whose name also starts with an E, who also makes, I think, less good BDSM content than I do. Less good of her BDSM content than me. Who is anti-porn and is kind of a swerf, and I think also a turf, though less vocal about that. Definitely vocally anti-porn, like in the like, oh my god, porn turns your brain into Swiss cheese like mentality, and that I just don't have any patience for at a personal level. Oh, because it's just not, the science does not show that's the relationship people have with pornography. It's not, it doesn't give you Swiss cheese brain. Vosh, who's a trash bag, did a really good video on the on consent after the Callahan allegations. Maybe I should watch that, because I haven't yet, and I haven't, like, I used to follow like more debate, like left-leaning stuff, and I don't really anymore. I'll watch the surfs, and I watch like YouTube commentary channels more than I watch debate people, and I don't follow them on Twitter. And like, let me tell you, removing myself from that part of the internet and muting a lot of names and words associated with left-leaning debaters has made my Twitter experience 1,000,000% better. Twitter, not always great. I'll probably always use it just because it's a good way to let people know when I'm doing things, new videos and streams, but not having to see infighting online has generally been a pretty positive experience. A positive experience. BDSM related to past complex trauma. Thoughts? CPTSD is complicated, and I'm not a therapist. So I'm yes, it exists, I'm sure. I don't know how much else I can comment on that outside of just acknowledging that it can be a thing. Certainly people, though not the majority of people are into BDSM, because of like past issues, and BDSM can certainly be helpful for resolving past trauma. It can certainly be something that people find healing and helpful, and other people find that their kinks are connected sometimes to traumatic past experiences, or their fetishes are connected to traumatic experiences, or people sometimes unhealthily try to use BDSM as a sole coping mechanism, when really you need a more holistic health perspective on helping you through issues most of the time. But I think there is a way, obviously, to engage in BDSM even when you do have trauma. It's certainly not the majority or most people, and I think framing it that way, or I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I'm just kind of saying as a general note that the perception of BDSM as being inherently linked to trauma is a negative, but that doesn't mean that we should like whitewash the community and make it seem like no one who's doing BDSM has trauma or mental health issues, because that is definitely not true. And I think if anything, BDSM, when done mindfully and with communication, and as something where you have an outside support system, you can definitely do BDSM while experiencing trauma and other things, and have it be a healthy thing. I have a video I did, I think, last year on masochism and self-harm in the BDSM community that's kind of related to this topic. And if you haven't seen that, maybe you should watch that one. Me and my master are going to be moving in with my father in order to save up money for a year. My father is very anti-BDSM. He thinks it's just abuse. He has made comments on my day collars before, and now I have an eternity collar. Of course, he'll see it on me 24/7 once I live there. Do you think it's a better idea to just not wear it, or wear it and weather whatever my dad has to say about it? I mean, family stuff is family stuff. Family stuff is so complex, and like, it depends on like where you're at in the spectrum of like possible like father experiences. Is it like, if he gets too sussy about it, he's gonna kick you out of the house and you're not gonna be able to live with him anymore? Or is it he's gonna bring it up and disapprove of it, but it's like awkward, but we can like eventually move through it? What would I do in this situation? My gut instinct is to be like, I would keep wearing it at first, see what the response is like, and if it gets too uncomfortable and too overwhelming, try to find something more subtle to wear in the meantime while you're living together to save money. I'm not sure if that's actually the best thing, but it is the first thing that I thought of. Because it sort of depends on what your relationship to your collar is, and it sounds like your collar is very important to you, and I don't want you to give up something that you get a lot of meaning and comfort from just to make other people less uncomfortable, just because they assume bad things about it. But I do wonder if there's like an alternative that you could use, like a necklace or like a bracelet even, that you could use with the same intention and symbolism, and then when you're back to living in your own space again, then bring the collar back and transition back into that, just to avoid stuff. But you also, you know, if you've worn day collars before and he's like made comments on that already, like cat's kind of out of the bag a little bit. Like, how much can you really do in that situation if you've already worn a day collar and he has found that objectionable? Like, how subtle do you have to be? Or is he going to think any piece of jewelry that you wear on a daily basis is like secretly a collar, you know? I feel like a ring would be like the most subtle, obviously. But maybe that's not your thing, right? So I guess you gotta kind of like, okay, if it's like if he gets too pissed off, he'll kick us out, but we really need the money type scenario, it's like a more of a survival thing, I would maybe not wear the collar, and I would try to find something else, maybe like a ring or a bracelet that I think will be less likely to arouse suspicion. But if it's just like, oh, it might be kind of awkward, I would try to start with wearing the collar and then see what the reaction is, and then just like, he can like, I feel like at some point you gotta set boundary with your family, and like, you might have to at some point be brave and make it clear that like, I know that you don't agree with this. I am an adult. I am choosing to be in this relationship. I know I can leave at any time. It's not your business. I know what your opinion is. We don't have to keep fighting about it. Please do not bring it up. Please don't ask me. Please don't, whatever it is that he's doing. I hope that we can have a respectful, enjoyable time living together. Like, just set those boundaries. Let him know that you understand what he says and what his opposition is and why he doesn't like it or whatever else. And then make sure you let him know that you know what he thinks. That's the way of phrasing that. I think that's what I meant to say. And, you know, sometimes you just can't make people happy. And they're always going to be suspect. And they're always going to be, well, no, they're going to think that you're acting suspect. And they're not going to be happy. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. I stumbled upon this research paper when looking into leather/BDSM research. All I got from it, there's an overall anti-woman perspective in the leather community. That's wild. That's not, what? Did they even talk to lesbians? Like, that's so fucking funny to me. Because if you go to a leather conference, half the people that are educators are female dominants. So it's like, how can two lesbian women in the leather community be anti-women? It's only women. There's only women. What do you mean? That just sounds like there are definitely, like, obviously, like, gay men can be misogynist, right? So if you only surveyed 10 people at, like, a gay leather bar, you might have found, like, 10 gay misogynists. But it doesn't mean the leather community is anti-women. But I don't think that that's true. It's certainly not from my experience. And that just sounds like either they had a... See, this is the thing, right? Is, like... People that are doing this research are, for the most part, not in the community themselves, so they don't really know where to go or who to ask questions to or how to frame their things or to, like, check what their conclusions actually even are because they don't know enough to know if their answers are actually accurate or not. They're kind of just fucking doing whatever. And, yeah, no, I don't, that doesn't vibe with my experience with what I've you know, in the leather scene. Like, they tend to be a little bit more, like, old. They tend to be older and, like, more conservative, but, like, not, like, capital C conservative, just in the sense of, like, they're usually, like working class, normal people, you know? Well, I did a video like 6 months ago or so on a jewelry store called Hermosa, which I think they probably just pronounce Hermosa because it's in fucking... Where is it at? There's a jewelry store in, I found... Where's the C, I want to say? Is it Mount Pleasant? Oh, this looks right. It's in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and there's also one in Charleston. Okay, maybe it's in South Carolina, not North Carolina. But either, I don't know if they do it the fucking way that I expect them to do, which is like, yeah, welcome to Hermosa Jewelry. Like, if you're gonna be a white girl that doesn't speak Spanish and you use a Spanish word for your brand name, you gotta not be offensive with it, you know? Just at least give it a solid attempt, right? Like, my Spanish is very rusty, but I'm gonna at least try to say it in the correct way, you know? Like, but anyways, this store is in Charleston, South Carolina, and they do custom welded bracelets. And they're in Charleston and Mount Pleasant if you want to go. It's like the most, like, normie, upper middle class, beach lady type shit you could imagine. Whatever you're thinking it is based on me describing it this way, yes, you are correct. If you want to go get this done, I would love to know how it goes. I'll pop a link in the description for you. I gotta know how they pronounce it now because it's gonna drive me nuts if I don't know. Do you want the link? I honestly thought the research was kind of bunk and lacking info from what I at least researched into. If you try to link it directly, I think YouTube would probably kind of just block the message as being spam. But if you want to put, like, if you want to, like, copy paste, like, the citation for the research, like the name and the journal it's from, I can probably find it that way. I mean, it's in one of the Carolinas. Oh my God, it's just like, I'm on this website. Like, it's just such a different life from the way that I live. Like, when I'm in a room where most of the people are blonde women, it feels like I've transported into, like, a different society, even when I'm in the same country. Like, I'm like, oh, this isn't, oh, that's right, I forgot. We live in a world where, like, women are supposed to be blonde and have long hair. I forgot about that. Anyways, they have "get welded" as, like, a tagline right on, like, the first page of their website. So if you want to go get welded at Hermosa Jewelry. There used to be an about section where she talked about, like, why she named it the way that she did. She's part of a tech incubator, apparently. I don't know what the fuck that means. Wild. Okay, let's get one more question in there, and then we'll have a little Banditi moment, and then we'll wrap up. I do have a video on BDSM versus abuse. I should probably update that because it's old. Yeah, I love him, but he doesn't have an open mind. I mean, you can only change your parents so much, you know? Like, they're our parents. They try their best, but sometimes they're not with it. Oh, sorry, I didn't go over the rules. Sorry, I totally forgot to go over the rules today. My bad. I was so sucked in by the Bandit camera. I forgot. Alright, hopefully nobody broke the rules too much. My bad. Oh, I forgot about, yeah, that George Santos is a drag queen. I forgot about that. I really haven't been following that too much, but didn't he just lie about everything in his resume? Wasn't that his problem? Is laughing at vanillaness considered kink shaming? Well, it depends on the laughter. Like, when I'd laugh at, like, something that's like, oh no, the vanilla people, they care so much about wedding rings. Oh, the little sweetheart has awoken. Oh, the little sweetheart. She has awoken. Here, I will raise the light slightly so we can fully gaze upon her beauty. I don't really think that they did anything. I'm gonna get her though. Look at, you can see her little thing in her hair. But when I laugh at something about vanillaness, it's always good natured. Like, I'm laughing because it's usually I'm laughing because of the way the BDSM community talks about it as funny. Like, oh no, we couldn't possibly be like the vanillas. That's me laughing at BDSM people who are afraid of being vanilla or being like vanilla people. But I basically never laugh at vanillaness in a way that's meant to be bad or putting anyone down. It's just that, like, vanilla life is funny, kink life is funny, we're all funny in different ways, and sometimes you gotta laugh at the ridiculousness of life, you know? Oh, I forgot to answer this. Yes, I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 3 years, 4 years, and I was vegetarian before that. I've been vegetarian and or vegan for, yeah, probably 10 years at this point. Wow. All right. I'm gonna go hang out with my dog. Do you have any tips about initiating communication about decollaring due to relationship issues with the D type with least damage, especially in high degree power change dynamics? Um, no matter what you do, it will always be difficult. I think this is going to be my last question. This is like a good one. This is important because I don't think I've often times gotten to talk about this. It will always involve a degree of conflict. It's about how much conflict there actually ends up being. And things like if you don't have anything in your contract to go off of for decollaring, I would probably advise writing a letter so that way you can say everything you want to say without being interrupted. You don't have to worry about like crying in the middle or getting screamed at or whatever. You can just say whatever it is you need to say in that letter, but be very clear about, maybe if you have something in your contract about like the property will always protect the property, or the submissive's first duty is to protect themselves. You can invoke that to say that like due to the status of the relationship, I can't follow my like prime directive order to protect the property, and therefore I believe the best course of action is to decollar in order to work on those relationship issues. This is very difficult. I tried to do this. I'm not going to say anything else about this because it's very personal. This didn't work. I will just be honest. If you are in a high conflict relationship with somebody who does not want you to be decollared and you feel strongly that you can't work on your relationship issues without taking that step, you might have to take the next step yourself, and that might end the underlying relationship. But I at least started by also trying to do this of being very respectful, writing a letter, talking about, what I thought the issues were, why they couldn't be addressed under a BDSM framework, how I thought that was damaging our ability to work on other issues, etc., etc. And I think with a different person, that same technique might have worked better. With the person I was with, that ended up not being optimal. And I think almost anything else I could have said or could have tried probably wouldn't have worked either. So it was sort of just I had to choose the best option out of a bunch of really crappy options. But that would be what my technique was. I think that's probably, of all the options, the best technique. And just make sure that you communicate. This isn't coming from an impulsive, irrational, too emotional place. Definitely walk it through in terms of like how you came to that decision, why you think it's the best. And if it's something where you are open to not being uncollared because maybe it's like I feel like this needs to happen because XYZ thing, but if you would be willing to stay collared if there's like a very concerted effort to work on XYZ thing, that leaves open one pathway for that communication where you leave open that it's like this isn't a for sure this is happening, but you you make it clear that that's on the table and that's heading in that direction, and that might be the wake-up call your partner needs. But on the other side, if it is like I am no longer wearing your collar, this is the end of this phase of our relationship, but right now you have to make sure you're being really clear that this isn't a negotiation, this isn't a question. You are no longer going to be collared, and to further persist on collaring you would be a violation of your boundaries and a violation of your consent. But it's always a messy thing. There's not an easy way to do it. You can just try to do it in a way that won't create a higher amount of conflict. Just try really hard when you're talking about this. Like, don't, even if it's something where you feel like your partner has done hurtful things, maybe they cheated on you, they stole from you, there's anger issues, they did things that made you feel afraid, you're whatever, right? Like, make sure you're really talking in more like I statements about like I feel this or I believe this. Like, don't start off that conversation by saying, here's all the things that you did wrong, and you did this, and you did this, you did this, you did this. Like, don't make it a blame game, because that makes people defensive and they won't really hear your message. But also, all of this goes out the door in an abusive scenario. If you believe your partner is abusing you and your relationship issues are an abuse dynamic, do whatever you can to decollar yourself. Leave that relationship. You do not have to explain anything. Your only priority is to get yourself safely out of the situation and remove yourself from the individual person. Okay. Deviant behavior. Oh, 50 Shades of Leather, misogyny, investigation of anti-women perspectives among other men. That sounds like somebody working backwards from an assumption. I gotta be honest. I assume that leather people are deviant, and so therefore I am going to find things that make that look true. So there we go. All right. Well, I think that is going to be it for tonight, guys. I'm going to bring out my precious little doggo. My precious little Bandolina. Hello, little Bandolina. Will you come over here? Good girl. There we go. Oh, stretch. Kitty, good stretch. Here we go. Good girl. Good girl. Come here, honey. The people want to see you. They want to say hello. They want to say hello to the puppy. Up close. You're so soft. You smell so good. Oh, I know. Good girl. Good girl. You're so cute. Look at that tail wag, honey. Yes, good girl. There we go. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, sweetheart. I know. Hi. I know we're not the most comfortable. I know. I can hear you. Hi. I just want to show people. I want to show them the cute little bow you have. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that little bow. Can you guys see it? Oh, I know, honey. I know. It's like, I'm done, please. Hello. Good girl. Good girl. Maybe I can make this. I'll make this shorter temporarily. You're such a good girl. Oh, I know. I know. Hi. You guys see it? You see it? There it is. There's a good shot of it right there. She's got a little rainbow, a little thing on her little head. It's so sweet. It's so cute. You're a good girl. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, wait. There we go. Ta-da, little foosball. Ta-da, bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you later. Thank you guys for being here with me on this beautiful Friday. Whoa. All right. We will see you all. Oh, yeah, I know. Cough it out. There we go. Oh, I know. Only fluffy butt. That's it. Where are you going to go now, little banditi? I know. All right, that's my dog. Have a good night, guys. Thank you for being here with me. I will see you soon. And yeah, we'll be here next Friday. I don't think there's anything else that we really need to talk about at this point. We'll hang out next Friday. Probably a new video this weekend. Stay safe, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. I'll look at